This review and the content it covers is intended for mature audiences and contains content of a harsh or sexual nature. Viewer discretion is advised. And there's no need to hide, this review is spoiler free. The process of getting a light novel published in English is normally a long and complex one. It'll have been adapted into an anime that will have done well on English streaming sites like Crunchyroll, and have had a manga adaptation that will have given it a wider audience in Japan. Without that kind of market testing, the publishers simply won't take the risk because they'll have no idea how it will do. So obviously getting a light novel series published in English without a ton of adaptations is impossible, right? Well, apparently Psycome is worth that risk since it's never been adapted at all. But I've got a store-bought English published copy right here. So is it really that good? Or is this just a case of corporate clumsiness? Kyosuke Kamiya is an ordinary high schooler who happens to get into a lot of fights, but has never killed anyone and values his daily life with his sister, Ayaka. That is until one day, when he is convicted of the murder of 12 and sentenced to 3 years at Purgatory Remedial Academy, a correctional school for underage killers. Now surrounded by one-time offenders at best and serial rapists at worst, he's been dubbed the Warehouse Butcher, earning instant fame among the country's craziest. And although he finds friendship in 3 girls, he must come to terms with the fact that they're all cold-blooded killers. First thing I'll say is that this story is a dark twist on your everyday high school romantic comedy. Its full title is Psycho Love Comedy, and it really lives up to that name. Conflicted is how I felt while reading it. On one hand, there were plenty of scenes with stifling atmospheres, just dripping with tension. That's the thing, although you know in your head that few, if any, characters in this story will actually ever die, you feel it regardless. And it's not just because the setting is jam-packed with deranged killers either. I'll talk more about this when we get around to the characters, but let it be known that the teachers are just as psychotic as the students. But then there are those scenes that remind you of its love comedy roots. It's not as if I want the fact that everyone's a cold-blooded killer to dominate every moment, but scenes like this end up undercutting a lot of the tension. I guess it's nice to get a break from doom and gloom every once in a while though, because that's exactly what it is, a break. Once that break is over, the story hits you hard again. Now, I couldn't talk about the story without at least discussing, in spoiler-free terms, the climax of the volume. It is incredible. And that's only just the setup for the rest of the series. The biggest nagging issue, and the most pressing question from the rest of the story, is dissolved and comes full circle. At first there are what appear to be glaring flaws in terms of narrative and character, but this final chapter takes those flaws and turns them into huge strengths. The thing that sets this series apart from your average love comedy light novel is its dark subject matter, and the twisted characters that inhabit Purgatory Remedial Academy. But it never takes this for granted and delivers on your expectations without coming off as edgy either, which is a rare quality. As a light parody of the rom-com genre, the characters of Psycome are often hilariously overblown walking tropes, with their personality trait ramped up to 11, with results ranging from funny to flat out awesome. Firstly, I'll talk about the protagonist, Kyosuke Kamiya. He's just about every other light novel protagonist trope rolled into one. He's an absurdly overpowered nice guy with a white knight complex who doesn't want to stand out but gets the attention of everyone in school regardless. But this doesn't make him a bad character as such. With all these traits rolled into a single character, this gives the author a chance to put the spin on each of these traits. And while in this single volume he or she is yet to do so, the cliffhanger to this volume promises good things. He isn't distractingly cliche either, since the situations he ends up in are atypical of a light novel. Next up is Mina Igarashi. She's the clumsy girl, but seeing as it's this series, there's a bit more to her than that. She's so clumsy that she's prone to dishing out accidental elbow drops and other potentially fatal attacks. It's when dealing with her character that the novel first shows signs of its first theme of acceptance. While I can confidently say that she's the worst character, that doesn't mean that she's actually a bad character. She's just outclassed by everyone else, and the fact that we know she isn't a cold-blooded killer makes her a little more boring than the others. I suppose she does work well as a comedy relief character, which is more than welcome in this backdrop. Eri Akabane is the real top killer of Kyosuke's class, having taken 6 lives, and is the first friend that Kamiya makes. She's also a very clever twist on the tsundere trope in more ways than one, although if I talked any more about that detail then I'd be getting into spoiler territory. Honestly, I was a little disappointed in how her character turned out, but then again I don't know what I was expecting from her. I think I'll probably have warmed up to her by the time the second volume comes around. Their teacher Kuromiya is among the most psychotic characters in this series. A twist on the teacher that looks like a kid, she rules Kyosuke's class with intimidation and enjoys tormenting her students. The majority of the tension in this volume comes exclusively from her and the things she's willing to do to anyone who even so much as gets on her bad side. Though she is the target of a hilarious running joke between her and one of her students. This running joke helps to ease the tension somewhat, which is helpful when you have a character like her. It leaves the reader with a silver lining of sorts, a feeling that it's all going to be alright for now. It definitely doesn't remove from how menacing she is though, as the closest thing this series has to a villain. Now it's time to talk about the best character in the series, the cover girl Renko Hikawa. The gas mask wearing death metal fan who, at first, seems to be personified entirely by her tits. Everything that came out of her mouth was tits this and tits that. At first it was really bothering me because well she was cute and I wanted to like her. It was just annoying that a character like her was barging her way into what was otherwise an incredibly good story. And then the climax rolled around, justifying everything she'd said or done in one fell swoop while at the same time putting other characters from the same archetype to shame. The mask is a very obvious common symbol about hiding one's true self, but even then you have no idea what you're in for. Let's just say that she's more than earned her spot in the front cover of the book and leave it at that, because she is something to be experienced rather than told about. The writing style isn't terrible, but don't expect the level of classic literature from it. Reading it reminded me a lot of reading back what I'd written in my last year of high school. But that being said, it does its job very well regardless. During tense moments, it sucks you right into the drama and the comedic timing is spot on. I spoke before about the theme of acceptance, and it is one of the more prevalent themes in this volume. It carries a message about accepting people for who they are, despite their glaring flaws. And while this volume has introduced the message, it looks like the rest of the series will challenge that idea. That's usually the best way to develop a theme, to introduce it to the audience and then say, well what about this, and what about that? By confronting issues surrounding a theme, it makes the message that much stronger. The other major theme at play here is overworld versus underworld. That is, the criminal underworld contrasting with the ordinary world, and the kinds of people that inhabit each. Kyosuke is seen as an inhabitant of the ordinary world thrust into the criminal underworld and forced to survive. The message at work here is that people from the overworld can't survive in the underworld, and vice versa. Once again, Kamiya, and the series as a whole, sets out to challenge that method and this time prove it wrong instead of right. The presence of both of these themes help to tie the volume together and give the reader a destination to look forward to. All of the illustrations for Psycome are relatively spoiler free, which is nice. A lot of people, like me, have this habit of flicking through a book without reading it just while they consider it. It's very easy to end up catching spoilers like that if you're not careful, but the illustrations here don't let you on to what's actually going on. Though they do take on a meaning, but only when you're reading what they're describing. In terms of character design, they match exactly how they're described on paper. Not to mention how distinctive and appealing the designs are. Although Mina and Kuromiya look a bit similar in black and white, you're never confused as to who's who as long as you're paying attention to the plot. There's nothing spectacular about the artwork itself, but it does its job. It's exactly what you'd expect from a rom-com light novel, and that's what we want in a dark twist to the genre. So should you read Psycome? Absolutely, without a doubt. Yes, you should. It takes the boring anime rom-com formula and puts a unique spin on it, throwing serial killers in left and right and taking the form of a psychological horror while it's at it. While it has many flaws, it more than makes up for them by the end of this first volume. Each character is a refreshing remix of the old and stale, and its future is very promising indeed. A better question is, why hasn't this had an anime adaptation yet? Well, the answer is that it's probably much too dark for television. There are multiple references to sexual assault, strangulation, and countless other horrific things that the Japanese usually just don't want to see on TV. Which is a shame really, because this series is a breath of fresh air in a genre that grew stale long ago, and it really deserves more recognition than it's had so far. Psycome is available in English from Yen on. They'll be publishing the rest of the series soon enough, but for now only the first of 6 volumes is available. For alternate recommendations, I point you towards ReZero. It also delivers a dark twist on another set of light novel tropes, the stuck in another world cliché, torturing its main character while offering that glimmer of hope at the end of the tunnel. Or if you just want a romantic comedy, then I'd recommend The Devil is a Part-Timer. Honestly, I'm not very familiar with the light novel scene right now, but the anime was funny enough, so I'm assuming that the original light novels are just as entertaining. Hopefully one of these will be to your liking. Remember to leave your thoughts in the comments, and until next time, cheerio.